Hey, what's up guys? Back again, just doing a continuation on my all the videos I've been doing on posture. So if you've been following, you know I started with describing the different types of posture, postural faults and the muscle imbalances associated with it. Muscles that are tight and short and the muscles that are weak and long, and how that distorts the posture. That's what I discussed in the first one. The second one was the stretches to use on the specific tight muscles that you have. And this video is going to be how to strengthen the weak muscles in order to put all the joints back in their right spot. Okay, and there's a reason I did it in that order. One, of course, you need to know what postural imbalance you've got, and I'll just run through that real quick. So, the common one is, I don't know if you can see that, but where your arse sticks out like that, right? You got an excessive low back curve. That's called a Donald Duck or a hyperlordosis. And that's usually coupled with a rounding of the upper back, like so, you know, like hunchback, and the head coming forward like that, so you end up looking like something like that. That is a result of tight levator scapula, tight neck extensors, tight pec minor, major, and anterior shoulder, also biceps as well, tight low back, and tight hip flexors. What's weak on that posture is the upper back, so the rhomboids, the middle and lower trapezius. Oh, and I forgot, the upper trapezius is tight in that person. And what's weak is the glutes and the upper hamstrings, as well as the lower abdominals. And then in the second common posture, what they call Pink Panther for short, is the exact opposite, where the butt is tucked under, like so your ass is kind of like that, and then the head comes forward. That's pretty much the same at the top of the body, same sort of weakness, but in the hips, it's because of a tight lower abdominals and tight hamstrings, so it's pretty much the opposite. Corrective exercise strengthens the muscles. If you just stretch the tight muscles but don't strengthen the weak muscles, then nothing really happens. A good analogy is the spokes on a bicycle. If you have a loose spoke and a tight spoke, but you only loosen the tight spoke and don't tighten the loose spoke, then you still get you still drive wonky, so you'll still end up moving wonky. So say, if you're in a posture like this, right, everything you do is going to move from this, so you'll be benching like this, rowing like this, you'll be squatting. You'll be trying to squat like that, and the bar's just going to mess up your neck. You're going to have tremendous back pain, right? And it's not appealing. I mean, people judge you by how you look, whether you like it or not. So your posture is an important part of that. Today I'm going to go through just some basic exercises, and these are pretty much around the board exercises, but they're more tailored to the Donald Duck, but you can modify them for the other type of posture. Key things to remember: same with the stretching, your mindset has to be different. You can't attack a corrective exercise just like a corrective stretch, because it requires a lot of focus mentally. And before you do these, so before you do any corrective exercise, you must do corrective stretching as well, because the muscle has reciprocal inhibition. So on muscles on either side of the joint, when one gets overdeveloped and tonic, it inhibits the other one from working. You also will get synergistic dominance, which is, say, 2 or 3 muscles are working together to do a movement, but if one of them is tonic from faulty posture and training, then that muscle will take over the movement and not allow the other muscles to do it. So you've got to soften and lengthen the tight muscles before you do the exercises. That way, when you're doing the exercises, you're actually moving the body towards function and away from dysfunction, as opposed to just towards dysfunction again. Now, the things you're going to need: a dowel rod. You don't need this. I mean, it helps for one of the exercises. With corrective exercises, it's very important that you're very diligent in your precision of movement, because we're trying to fix the posture, and it's very scientific, I guess. And you will need one of these for one of the exercises. There's no real alternative. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this, and comment any questions and if you want any clarifications, just let me know. And yeah, enjoy. I forgot to mention this before, but a good time to do corrective exercises at the end of a workout, the beginning of the workout, completely separate, like you could do it in the morning or before bed, but as regularly as possible is better. Remember to stretch, and also a good idea is to stretch in between each set. Not so much for this one, but for other exercises. It's better to stretch certain muscles, that way you can actually do it properly. And alright, so the first exercise is a 4-point tummy vacuum. This is to really train the transverse abdominis. This is a deep abdominal wall, help to give stability in the midsection. Your core is not just your abdominals like that you see in the mirror, okay? And I'm shirtless because you need to see my belly move in this exercise. So what you do is you take your stick. Well, you don't need your stick, but I'm gonna use the stick. Okay. You want to be parallel to the floor. You want your torso parallel to the floor. Okay. Put stick, if you have one or not, just record yourself and then use that as a cue. You want your legs at 90 as well as your arms, like so. From here, you let the belly, as you can see here, you let the belly come out, and then it's called the tummy vacuum. You suck the belly button in, hold that for 10 seconds while keeping everything else in line, and then just relax, just let it come out. Do that 10 times, 2 to 3 sets of that with a minute rest in between each set. So one set is 10 reps of 10-second holds. Now you don't need the stick for that, but if you're going to record yourself, just make sure that you're level and that you don't have an excessive lower back curve, and you'll be fine. This exercise is for the lower abdominals, just to sort of switch them on. So this is a good one for the people who have hyperlordosis, and so a lot of people think when they have low back pain that it's because of the low back, but it's actually because all of the load is being put to the low back instead of the glutes and the lower abdominals holding the hip in place for the load to be distributed evenly. So this is a good one to do just to help tip the hips instead of being anteriorly rotated, to put them back more under you. You lay like this. Okay, now where you would normally have a low back curve, you flatten it. Now you can flatten it just by sucking the belly button in like we did before. Deep belly breath, suck it in, and you'll notice that you flatten it like that. Okay, now from here you want to keep the upper abdominals relaxed. So I normally just put my fingers there and just feel, and if I feel a contraction, then I know I'm doing it right. And you want to make sure your hips, so you don't want one hip, up like that. We want to train the body in the right position, so keep the hips level, suck the belly button in, and then all you want to do is just lift one leg up. Okay? Now keeping the whole body relaxed, except obviously for the bit you're working. You want to just lower that leg slowly. Do that 10 times each side, making sure your back doesn't come up, making sure it stays flat like that. If it comes up, then you're just using your hip flexors and your low back, and you're not doing it right. And then another tip, with this exercise, you'll want to stretch your hip flexors in between each set, because that hip flexor will synergistically dominate. Like I said before, it'll take over the lower abdominals, which is what we want to train. Do that 3 sets of 10 each side, about a minute or 2 rest in between, and you'll be sweet. This next exercise is called the prone cobra. It's really good for your training the postural muscles of the upper back. Rhomboids, lower trapezius, middle trapezius. With this one, you want to stretch your traps as well. Actually, yeah, it's pretty much stretch your traps and your chest a lot in between each set, just to allow the shoulders to go back and those muscles to turn on. Set and rep wise, you hold it for as long as you can until you lose form, and then your rest time is half of what you worked for. So if you hold it for a minute, you get 30 seconds rest. If you hold it for 30 seconds rest, you get 15 seconds rest. Do that 3 times, and then each time just try and last longer and longer until you can hold it for about 2 minutes. All you do is turn the palms outwards, supinate, so you can hold a cup of soup, Okay, and then lift the chest up, shoulders back, arms back, thumbs up. Just hold that. Make sure you tuck your chin, otherwise you're just training your neck extensors. Like so. This next one's called standing wall reach. It's also a good test to know whether or not you should be doing any overhead movement, okay? Because if your lats are too tight, and your thoracic spine can't extend, so you can't pick your chest up like that, right? As soon as you go to move your arms overhead, your shoulder will lock. You'll end up craning at the lower back just to get things overhead for an overhead press example, for an example. Whereas normally you would just go like that, you'll end up craning like that just to allow the arms to go over. That puts you at a lot of risk for low back injury, as well as a shoulder injury as well. So this is also a test as well as a corrective exercise. If you can't do this, I wouldn't be doing anything overhead at all until you stretch the lats. And obviously that's the muscle you want to stretch in between each set. I'll just show you the stretch real quick. Do that for like a minute in between each set. The test is, what you do is you get your feet about shoulder width apart from the wall. Shoulder width apart, about 3 inches from the wall. Lean your back on it. Now you don't want your back like this. Okay? You want to flatten your back on the wall. So get as much of your spine on the wall as you can. The test is just to keep as much of your back on the wall as you can and reach up and touch the wall above you. If you can't reach up and touch the wall above you, then that means your lats are too tight and you have no thoracic mobility and you shouldn't be pressing overhead at all. Now the exercise is as follows, same thing, feet about shoulder width apart, 3 inches from the wall, lengthen the spine and have your arms just at about 90. Now keeping the spine against the wall, keeping the arms against the wall, you just reach out into a Y, okay, and back. Just reach out into a Y. You'll notice a lot of strain in your mid back here. That's going to be training your posture as well and help with your overhead pressing ability, because you'll be able to keep tight there while pressing overhead. Do that, 10 reps, minute rest, 3 sets, too easy. Alright, this is the last exercise type. There's 2 variants on it. One's more advanced, one isn't. We're going to start with the least advanced, of course. This one is called Supine Hip Extension with back on Swiss ball. This is really good for training the glutes and upper hamstrings to work together in a sort of squat pattern. You've seen me do it in another video where I'm in the gym. Before doing this one, you'll want to stretch your hip flexors and the sides of your hips, so the hip rotators. You know, any stretch that puts, curves your body like that, you'll want to do that because you'll probably have one side tighter. Do this one. I do it 3 sets of 10, but with each rep, hold it at the top for 5 seconds. And there's variants for depending on what posture you have. You want to put your upper back and neck just so it sits comfortably. You want to turn your palms down, that way you're activating the posture muscles. Keeping the shins vertical, okay? You just want to drop like so. And then to make sure you're pushing through your heels, lift your toes up, and so you're using your glutes, and then just up like that until you get to parallel. If you have a Donald Duck type posture, at the bottom you'll want to tuck your hips using the same mechanism you used in the lower abdominal exercise. You want to tuck the hips under, that way you're activating the glutes and hamstrings. If you have a Pink Panther posture with the sway back, on the way down you'll want to try and curve, you'll want to try and put the curve in your low back as you go down. Okay, and then when you extend, you won't want to stop here like the other person would. You want to go further because you want to use that low back. Because in a Pink Panther, the low back is weak, as opposed to in a Donald Duck where it's generally strong and overworked. But yeah, that's the exercise. Key things as well, from your point of view. So you watching your legs, you want to make sure your hips aren't deviating side to side. Make sure you're using each leg evenly. At the top, your hips should be level. If you've got one hip higher than the other, that means one glute is firing more than the other, which could mean that the hip flexor is too tight and you need to stretch it on that side. This one is a good one for the hip extensors, so the upper hamstrings, well, hamstrings in general, and glutes, and a good stabilizer, because you got your feet on the Swiss ball this time. Same notes again with the posture. So if you've got a a posture where your back just turns into legs, there's no arse there because there's no curve, you'll want to extend a bit further than as far as is comfortable, because you'll want to use your low back. But if you're not, then you want to tuck your butt under and just come up until you feel a real squeeze in your glute hamstring complex. Feet on the Swiss ball. Now the higher up you go, the easier it'll be. Palms up, down, like so, activating the back muscles, and then you just squeeze the glutes like that, and you just hold. Same thing, you want to make sure your hips are level. So from watching your point of view, if one hip's higher up like that, and that means one glute's firing more than the other, like so, and you just hold that. I hold for about 5-10 seconds, do that 10 reps, minute rest, again 3 times, and those are the exercises. There's a few more that you can do, but those are real basic ones to help do them, to help fix postural problems, or at least correct them somewhat. Now you want to do your stretches and your exercises very regularly to get a good result, as well as manual massage and foam rolling, mobilization. Book a massage if you have the money. But that's it. Comment any questions you got, like and subscribe for more. Got more stuff, good stuff coming.